estimate it to be in the millions. Then we have the beast of the planet. We have our animals that we know of today, but only God knows what was roaming and flying around back then. Not much for God's angels to do with when you think about it, especially if these beasts are lacking in intelligence they could work with. But then came man, and then the game changed. Now science has made it clear that this planet has endured multiple extinction-level cataclysmic events. The first major recorded one, of course, is the Great Flood. But if you were able to witness that event, what other events were going on at that time? What was going on in space? How did the stars look? Where were the planets? How did the planets look? How did the sky look? Were they having the same weather problems we are having? Were they also feeling threatened by a rogue planet X of some sort? Were they being visited by ET? Was it a second star? Was this civilization that existed before the flood, was it like the world we see today? Only that version was a bit more advanced. Atlantis. Mainly because they had fallen angels and giants to help them put it all together. As we do today, in a way. So it happened again in Egypt with the 10 plagues, but yet this was also a global event. In trying to understand this star, we have an industrial age and many things are being manufactured and built right here in the U.S. At the same time, we have a lot of money being put out by the government into special programs, labs. Many of the programs that exist today were founded around that time. 40s and 50s, and they have since expanded, and so has the military. The manufacturing industry, the food and drug industry, all established and mature. Now also back then in 47, we have the Roswell crash, which I mark as the beginning of a public awakening, where people really started to think twice about what the government had up its sleeves. The media also took advantage of this as well, and we can clearly see what has become of that today. Now what happened first, the chicken or the egg? The first launch of anything was in 57 when the Russians launched Sputnik. Then all of a sudden everybody knew how to fly into space. A decade after the Roswell crash. Interesting, isn't it? But here is the thing. They also discovered this second star system. Planet X, Nibiru, they knew about it back then. And almost everything that they have done has been because of that. And not only that, but because of the coming of Jesus has them on edge as well. Now,
Mr. J is not coming. Mr. J is not coming, so just bypass that, ignore it. Mr. J is not coming. Not the Miss J they talking about. And put it like that.
I've always said that these evil elitists who sit at the top, they do absolutely believe in biblical prophecy. For two reasons. One, they have evidence of it, and two, they have direct contact with these entities who know for sure what is happening and coming. And you gotta think, folks, 50, 70 years is really not a long enough time to prepare for all of this. The underground bases and cities, allying nations, trying to crush the weakest, population density control, satellites being launched. They launch one every chance they get. The worse things get, the more rockets they launch. Ever notice the pattern? You have NASA, HAARP, CERN, chemtrails, all tied in together as an attempt to control their own fate and try to mitigate something they can truly do nothing about. And so they are focusing on saving their own butts. Meteorites are going to start penetrating the atmosphere and making impacts, folks. Make no mistake. This is not a maybe. The other day, the ISS had to make a maneuver, they call it, to avoid being hit by what they call space debris. This is not something they have to do all the time, and when they do, it's documented. Go watch the asteroid video I just uploaded. This is happening. How bad is it going to get? I don't know. It really depends how long we have to hang around in this debris field. And I don't know how big the debris field is. Also, the Earth is forcing something to the surface. They've known about that for a long time as well. The magnet lab, the CERN lab, those magnets are incredibly powerful. You can actually deflect almost anything with a magnet. Something like a force field. We have the Space Force. Who's the underground force? COVID, new diseases and viruses were attacking us a little over here, a little over there, until it one day made a global impact. And these storm systems, the debris, it's going to hit just like this pandemic, suddenly. This is it. This, to me, is the edge of the tribulation we are all about to face. And you know what? God is actually going to make certain that many of you are ready. He is going to prepare you. Look, He is not going to let a single good thing go to waste. He is going to show you purpose, and He is going to challenge you enough to prepare you for the times ahead. But they are preparing and have been for decades. The elites also know that we have entered an age where these strange beings will make themselves known again. And they have also come the same way. They just make appearances. And I am sure many of those appearances will be in the form of some type of spacecraft. Not ours. But even that, folks, is also the work of the fallen. And you will find out that they are just everywhere. Our biggest challenge will be maintaining the health of our spirit. Guns and muscles are only going to be useful in certain circumstances, but there is no real defense for some of the things we are to face. And it's going to take guidance from the Creator to maneuver through it. If you have been watching the show lately, you may have noticed that I'll do a show on a subject and then a day or two later a headline will pop up regarding the very topic. I am relying on God to guide me through all this information gathering. Sometimes I don't know why I get into certain things, and some of them can be quite dangerous to get into. We are an instrument of national power. Bridenstine added, it is soft power, it is diplomatic power, information power, economic power. He said about NASA's role in working with other nations in space through ongoing programs like the International Space Station, the steps the agency has taken in commercializing space, and more. This is really a tool of diplomacy for the nation, he said about the agency. But we can't do any of these things if space is not secure. And that's why it was important to create the Space Force. That's why it's important for NASA to partner with the Space Force. In securing space, NASA aims to, with the support of the U.S. Space Force, have their international collaborators agree to basic norms of behavior, which will ultimately be what will preserve space for humanity, Bridenstine said. With this MOU, the agency and the military branch aim to adhere to the Outer Space Treaty, but take it even further by collaboratively creating these norms so that, as companies and space agencies work to launch their own missions to space, they take into account what are the norms of behavior that all nations need to abide by in order for us to be able to sustain space for a long time. So all space soldiers unite and blast off into the future.